I want to personally thank all those who are assembled here this morning and those who are assembled continually on marches in regards to violence. I thank them for their great commitment, the block clubs, the ministers, the business leaders, all those that are assembled here, dealing with gun violence not only here in the city but throughout America, and to really say to us how important that people to speak out in regards to protecting our brothers and sisters throughout America. And I'd like to thank Joyce Foundation, Ellen Aberdeen, for her great commitment. This foundation has assisted us continually in the efforts of education, the efforts of looking at gun violence in personal ways, affecting young children and adults, not only here in Chicago, but throughout the country. Like anything else, we are a country of laws, and we should never be a country of guns. And that's why on Monday's ruling by the United States Supreme Court made it clear to all that our current handgun ordinance will soon be struck down by the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. With that in mind, I want to announce our proposal to rewrite Chicago's gun laws. And it's called the Responsible Gun Ownership Ordinance. It reasonably balances previous court rulings on the Second Amendment rights with our determination to protect all of our citizens from violence and keep them safe. For the safety of every Chicagoan, I encourage the City Council to move quickly to consider and enact it. Our proposal is based on previous Supreme Court rulings, including the Washington, D.C. decision, that cities cannot prohibit, and I underline that cities cannot prohibit the possession of handguns in the home for self-defense, but that other reasonable restrictions are appropriate and do not violate the Second Amendment. The court has further ruled that the Second Amendment right is not unlimited. It has offered examples of valid regulations that cities and states can impose. Again, I want to stress that the previous court ruling applied to guns in the home. In rewriting our ordinance, we have abided by the court's previous guidance. Our new ordinance is based on many conversations we've had with Chicagoans, other experts, our review of many studies and reports, 2 public hearings held by the City Council. We have, of course, also reviewed the ordinance and laws relating to guns and gun ownership in states and cities, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and New York. Before Mara Georges reviews our new ordinance with you, I'd like to reflect on the harm that is done across America, on our streets and our homes, because too many people can easily, and that's underline it, too many people can easily obtain guns in America. It's the most easy thing to get in America. It's harder to get a car license. A number of things, a gun in the home increases the risk, unfortunately, of unintentional firearm injury, suicide, and homicide. The danger of having a gun in the home is especially serious for children and adolescents. In states with more guns, young people are at higher risk for accidental gun injuries, suicide, and homicide. Women in states with higher levels of household firearm ownership are more likely to be murdered. A long line of studies show that gun availability is a risk factor for suicide. Firearms in the home are associated with significantly higher rates of suicide, including among young people. And at the same time, our law enforcement and emergency first responders are also at a greater risk when they enter a home where there are guns. Taken together with these facts compelling, they underscore why I firmly believe that although people have a constitutional right to have a handgun in their home, the best way to avoid firearm-related injuries and death is not to have a gun in the home in the first place. But the way the Supreme Court has announced it, and we are a country of laws, and we abide by our laws. Our new ordinance allows a 2-step process to own and register a handgun. First, the applicant must obtain a city firearms permit, which requires having a valid State of Illinois firearms owner's identification card. Then the applicant must register the gun with the Chicago Police Department. Handgun ownership is prohibited for anyone who has been convicted of any violent crime, has 2 or more offenses for driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs, and under state law has been convicted of domestic violence. It bans assault weapons, of course, provides mandatory jail time beginning in 2011 for anyone who's caught with one, and that's 18-year-old and above, a UUW. Remember that. It does not apply to juveniles. Our ordinance requires firearms safety training both in classroom and on a firing range, which is important for their own safety. It provides for the protection and safety of our children, young people, and homes where guns are owned. And it banned gun shops in Chicago. There are severe penalties for violating the ordinance, including hefty fines and jail time. I want to make it clear about all of this. As long as I am mayor, we will never give up the gun violence, into gun violence that continues to threaten every part of our nation, including Chicago. For example, it protects taxpayers against the cost the city might incur if a first responder who in good faith perceives danger caused by the presence of a gun and shoots an armed person in someone's home. So what do we do with that? Because everyone loves to sue the city. They're really suing the taxpayers, and you pay for it. So what we're looking for is some way where the state and federal levels granting liability immunity to first responders in the city. Now, why is that? Since the gun manufacturers have immunity, why can't the taxpayers have immunity? Because of an incident taking place, a misunderstanding in a home, a first responder, fire, or police, and that's the issue there. And also there has to be, as you know, they have changed the law for unlawful use of a weapon, carrying a weapon. And the way it is, it's 18 and above. We must come together in some way figure this out, because between 13 and 17, if you're caught with a gun, you have so many probations, it could fill this room. There's no discipline by the judiciary over the juvenile. So unfortunately, the law creates the person to eventually kill. The law creates the gangbanger, who are smart, to take the gun, to give the juvenile and say, you're riding with me. You're walking down the street with me. You talk to any police officer. So you have the 17-year-old, if the adult has it, he gets a mandatory sentence. But the under 18, they're going to walk around with the gun. And they're going to buy in the car with the gun because they understand the law. The gangbangers and dope dealers understand this law. There must be coming to a mind to figure this out, because society is creating this. You are allowing no discipline, no ramifications for carrying a gun on your block. Now think of that. That is the problem. And that's why it's important that the General Assembly has to have a full discussion. And I hear this constantly. If we don't do this, you're allowing the juveniles to carry guns. Ask any Chicago police officer how many guns they pick up from juveniles every day. They take them down to juvenile court. He or she is back quicker than the Chicago Police Department can get back. And they take them the second time. They take him the third time. They take him the fourth time. They keep taking him there. And unfortunately, no one has disciplined this young person in some way. If we don't think about that issue, that will overtake, again, the issue of gun violence in our city. When the wrong people have access to guns, whoever they are, whether gangbangers or drug dealers or abusive parents, sons or daughters, needless violence is likely to happen, whether it's on our streets or in their homes. As a father and a grandfather, nothing affects me more deeply and personally than violence in Chicago. I lost a son because of an illness, and it still stays with me. And just think, when you lose a child because of gun violence, he or she has done nothing wrong at such earlier ages in life, that stays with them forever. And that's why purpose over pain is to take. Many people came forward, the whole family, and said, we want to do something positive. We can't stay angry any longer. We have to reach out to our brothers and sisters in our families and say, we have to do something about gun violence among juveniles. We have to do that, and it's very important for us. And so what we see now in national surveys has shown that Americans, including gun owners, support laws that protect the rights of law-abiding citizens to purchase guns, but also help and for the legal weapons that kill our children. And this is a federal, and I'm not bum rapping the federal government, but guns move across states. And when you move across states, it's called interstate. It's like drugs, interstate. They are making this a local problem. We can only seize, every day we're seizing guns. Those guns are coming from someplace. And yes, we will seek the help of the federal government. They have to help us. I'm not criticizing anyone, any locally, but the federal government has to say the illegal sale of guns are illegal, and that's wrong in our society. And there's where they have to help us. They jeopardize every police officer on the street on a daily basis. And that's what we're worried about, as well as citizens. Police officer wants to go to work. He doesn't want a gun ever pointed in his face. That is the major issue. Last year, $10 billion of guns and ammunition were sold in America. It's a growing industry in America, guns and ammunition to be sold. And again, for many years as state's attorney, I've seen the firsthand experience of gun violence every day with all the cases coming into court. Talking to victims and their family, those that survived, those who are not their family, talking to police officers on the street the same way. And so like anything else, these police officers want to go home to their families. They want to go home to their families. The impact of gun violence in our community explain why we need responsible ordinances, responsible regulations dealing with those who have handguns in their home for self-defense only. I believe that enacting a new handgun law is a responsible step for us and the right thing to do. Without it, I fear that there will be greater violence in the streets, in our homes. I know there will be some, especially gun extremists around the nation, who object to what we're working to accomplish. But as a civilized society, we have a right in industrial society to protect all of our citizens. Others might say we haven't gone far enough. But as mayor, I must balance the interest of abiding by the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling with my responsibility to protect the people of Chicago and keep them safe. That's why we believe we have accomplished this in this ordinance. Mara George will explain in detail many of the proposals that will be enacted dealing with this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Mara Georges. I'm the Corporation Counsel for the City of Chicago. As Mayor Daley has described, we drafted the Responsible Gun Ownership Ordinance in response to the Supreme Court's decision earlier this week. We believe that this ordinance effectively balances the right to possess a gun in the home for the purpose of self-defense with the substantial risks to public safety that are associated with guns. The proposed ordinance is comprehensive. It regulates the sale and possession of firearms, establishes a permit process for gun owners, and includes a registration requirement for guns that allows for the registration of handguns. First, I think it is easiest to begin by describing what is banned under this ordinance. Banned are 1, the sale of firearms in the city of Chicago. Banned are 2, certain types of ammunition, including metal and armor-piercing bullets and .50 caliber bullets. Banned are 3, the sale of ammunition to minors. Banned are 4, laser sight accessories, silencers, and mufflers. Banned are 5, certain types of guns, including sawed-off shotguns, .50 caliber rifles, machine guns, short-barreled rifles and assault weapons, and handguns deemed unsafe by the police superintendent. These guns are unregisterable, and it is illegal to possess an unregisterable firearm in the city of Chicago. Banned are 6, shooting galleries and target ranges other than for law enforcement. Consistent with the Supreme Court's ruling, we are allowing the possession of handguns in limited circumstances. That is, in the home for self-defense purposes. So there is no confusion about the scope of handgun possession within the city of Chicago. Home is defined in the ordinance as the inside of a person's dwelling unit, which is traditionally used for living purposes. It is not the garage. It is not the stairs, not porches, not the back, side, or front yard space. Dormitories, hotels, and group living homes are excluded from the definition of home. They are not homes for purposes of this ordinance. In addition, as Mayor Daley mentioned, there is a two-step registration requirement for guns. The first step requires individuals to obtain a Chicago firearm permit, a CFP, prior to owning a gun. And the second step requires gun owners to obtain a registration certificate for each of their firearms. Both the CFP and the registration certificate are issued by the Chicago Police Department. The ordinance imposes reasonable limitations on who can obtain a CFP. For example, individuals must be 21 years of age or older, or 18 to 20 years of age with parental permission to obtain a CFP. They must possess a valid Illinois FOID card. They must not have been convicted of a violent crime or of 2 or more offenses of driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs. They must not have been convicted of an unlawful use of weapons charge involving a firearm. They must not have violated other municipal code provisions regarding possession of laser sight accessories, silencers or mufflers, or unlawful sales of firearms, or otherwise be ineligible to possess a firearm under any law. Individuals must demonstrate that they've undergone firearms safety training, both in a classroom and on a firing range, prior to obtaining a CFP. As I previously stated, the CFP must be obtained prior to taking possession of any gun, and it must be renewed every 3 years. As with our previous ordinance, the Responsible Gun Ownership Ordinance includes a registration requirement for guns. The new ordinance, however, allows for the registration of handguns. A registration certificate is required for each and every firearm. The application for the registration certificate must be submitted no more than 5 business days after acquiring the firearm. Each applicant will be issued only 1 registration certificate per month for a handgun, which must be for the home in which the applicant resides. I'll say that again. We are limiting the possession of handguns in the city of Chicago to 1 per month, which must be for the home in which the applicant resides. Individuals have 90 days after the effective date of this ordinance to register their weapons, including to register handguns that were previously unregistered. And we are urging the public to register those handguns within this 90-day period. The ordinance also contains a procedure for individuals who are denied a CFP or are denied a firearm registration certificate to appeal such denials. I'd like to briefly discuss the regulations contained in the Responsible Gun Ownership Ordinance regarding what guns can be possessed. These regulations are in addition to applicable state laws. As I previously mentioned, handguns are only allowed in the registrant's home for self-defense. Long guns are only allowed in the individual's home or fixed place of business. You cannot possess a gun in your vehicle in the city of Chicago unless it is broken down into a non-functioning state. Each person who keeps or possesses a firearm in his or her home must keep no more than 1 firearm in his home assembled and operated at any time. All other firearms must be broken down into a non-functioning state or have a trigger lock or other mechanism making the firearm temporarily inoperable. In homes with minors under the age of 18, guns must be kept secured on the person of the registrant, with trigger locks, or in locked boxes. The city is also establishing a gun offender registry, Any gun offender, any person convicted of a gun offense who lives, works, or attends school in the city must register with the Chicago Police Department and the police superintendent. This registry will be posted on the police department's website and available for review by the public. Consequences for violating the Responsible Gun Ownership Ordinance are severe. Penalties include fines of $1,000 to $5,000 and incarceration for not less than 20 nor more than 90 days for certain offenses. Subsequent convictions are punishable by a fine of $5,000 to $10,000 and by incarceration of not less than 30 days nor more than 6 months. Further, the ordinance authorizes the seizure and destruction of any weapons kept in violation of this chapter. As Mayor Daley mentioned, this ordinance was crafted through careful discussion and review. We are hopeful that the City Council will support it. Further, we are confident that this ordinance is consistent with the Supreme Court's rulings in the Heller and McDonald decisions. I'd like to introduce Ron Hoth, the Executive Director of the city's CAPS.
Thanks, Myra. I want to begin by commending the Mayor and the Corporation Council, Myra Georges, for acting so quickly to propose reasonable gun restrictions for those who will choose to purchase a handgun for the home. Everyone standing here today wanted the existing handgun ban to remain in effect. The current ban undoubtedly saved scores of lives because it kept these dangerous weapons out of the home. We respect and must accept the Supreme Court's decision. I strongly disagree with their conclusion that the answer to violence affecting the city of Chicago and cities across the country is more guns. I know firsthand the destructive nature of handguns. I lost my son because someone made the decision to use a loaded weapon on a CTA bus, regardless of the consequences. And while we know that some residents will take this opportunity to acquire a handgun as a way to feel safe, I want Chicago residents to know that you don't have to be armed to protect yourself and your loved ones from violent crime. The real answer to making our streets safer is having the community partner with city officials, local law enforcement, businesses, and faith-based organizations to address the conditions that lead to violence. The answer is giving our children alternatives to hanging out on the street and engaging in criminal activity. Residents need to work side by side with police to share information about illegal activity. Instead of buying a gun, use your cell phone to anonymously report suspicious or illegal activity. Attend a block club meeting, CAPS march or rally, and send the message that we are taking back our communities. Break the code of silence that protects the gangbangers, drug dealers, and criminals who are preying on law-abiding citizens. As residents, there are so many things we can do to make our streets safer that don't involve buying a weapon. Your weapons are your eyes and ears and your mind. If you see something, say something. If you see something, say something. Don't ignore or accept criminal activity on your block. The way to stop the violence is by stopping the silence, because silence kills. Together we can make a difference in this fight against crime. So I look forward to working with residents across the city as the director of CAPS to address the issues of violence that affect our communities. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Annette Nance Holt, mother of Blair Holt. The other part to this, actually, I think about this gun ban being overturned, and I look at it, the reasons why the gun ban are overturned as opposed to the reasons why we really want a gun. Having a gun that day when my son was killed wouldn't have saved his life. Not having guns on the street would have saved my son's life and saved 4 other young teenagers the strife of living their lives of knowing that their friend was gunned down and murdered on a bus, doing the right thing coming home from school. So, I really question that. They say guns are going to make black and brown communities feel more safe. If they're not coming in your house, how safe are we going to be? Because really, most of the people who are being murdered are innocent victims on the streets of the city of Chicago. They are not in their homes. They're not breaking into their homes. So we need to cut the foolishness out and tell the truth. That's really what this is about. Protecting those who protect us. Basically, that's what I'm going to talk about today because I'm a captain on the fire department, and that's my heart. And then Ryan is a police officer. So since the Supreme Court ruling, how do we protect police officers, firefighters, and paramedics? We all have to agree that they are the ones who are there when we need us and protect and serve. They are in our communities when no one else is. We must not lose sight of that since this ruling and allow our love of guns not to keep those safe who risk their lives every day to keep this city safe. Knowing firsthand what guns can do to devastate a family and community, when I lost my son, along with so many other families who suffer this same fate, I would not want any other family to experience this. Police, fire, paramedics, anyone. So I have not only lost my son, but in my career as a firefighter, my experiences in dealing with gun violence on the streets of the city of Chicago with my crew as well. We go on calls every day that can turn out differently. We might go for one particular call and it can turn into something drastically different all of a sudden. So on this particular day, we got a call for a gunshot in Morgan Park neighborhood, and that's where I'm assigned now. This is before I was assigned there. We go on a call, and it's people all on the block, neighbors all on this block, at least 50 of them. We are committed. We should wait for police, but we are committed because the neighbors say that person's been shot, so we don't wait on the police. And we respond to this guy. This guy is sitting on the porch with a Glock in his hand. Now, this is before I lost my son, years before, and I told him about it. He's sitting on the porch with a Glock, loaded with a clip in his pocket. 3 of us walk up on him. We could have been killed that day instantly. We could have ran, we would have been shot. We know that. We take the gun from him, and we hold it till the police come. One of us takes him, I take him, the offender, and try to move him away from the gun. I talk him away from it. My paramedic goes in to talk to see who was really shot, because this guy isn't shot. He's actually the shooter. He actually opened up fire on his brother, point blank. He shot him 9 times. He murdered his brother in his home, in his parents' family home. I had to go to court and testify to say, this guy told me he killed his brother. Did I have to do that? I could have said I didn't hear it, but I did it because it was the right thing to do. We can all go on well-being checks because we go on well-being checks as well. What those are with the fire department is some family calls and says, hey, my dad, I haven't heard from him. Can you go check on him? So on this particular night, I'm on a truck company. We go out to investigate a senior citizen who hasn't answered the door. The police are there. We put a ladder up to the 2nd floor window where we can climb in. He jumps up with a shotgun. Instantly, we could have been killed again. These are instances where we are in danger every day we go out there. We go to fires. And in the fires, if people have guns and ammunition, especially those we don't know about, they can explode and go off and injure or kill us as well. So, there are a lot of different scenarios that can happen. This is not just a problem where first responders here have problems. In Lexington, Kentucky, let me point out an African-American female, her first day on the job, promoted to lieutenant. She goes out on a call with her crew. They find out it is a domestic after the point. She is shot and killed her first day as a lieutenant. One of her crew members is shot and injured for life. They have the right to carry there, believe it or not, but who protected the first responders? Who's going to deal with the rest, what turns out after this? Did anybody address that issue? No. Another person, Officer Earhart, who died recently, he was on the Chicago Police Department, went to serve a warrant. I know firsthand, I remember him being shot, and I felt bad. But then I go on calls to his house because for the rest of his life, up until he died recently, he was disabled. He was on a ventilator because he was shot by a person in a house with a gun when he went to do his job. Who protected his family? So these are only a small amount of things that happen to us every day. And we forget because they don't just seem to personally impact our lives, so we don't think about it. It's just us who live these. So, it impacts the lives of others whose loved ones continue to survive and co-workers. We have to remember that. They survive this every day, and they have to deal with it when they go see it. You see, this is already a dangerous job, being a police officer, a firefighter, and a paramedic. We need protection as well. We need a common sense solution to a not so commonly noted problem. that we will encounter every day from law-abiding citizens now who say they want guns to protect their homes. So I am asking that if you know this will be a problem, have a solution before we have to ask, why did it have to happen? Thank you.
First, let me just thank the mayor for his persistence in fighting against this culture of America that's in love with guns. I thank him for never quitting, and just like he's never quitting, we as citizens cannot quit and cannot give up fighting against this culture that's permeating our society. I have to say first, I'm very saddened by the Supreme Court's decision because obviously these protected court buildings and gated communities in which they live and work has seemingly made them immune to our communities where yellow tape and teddy bears seemingly are becoming the new landmarks of our neighborhoods. They obviously didn't hear the cries and the shots and the helicopters, and obviously did not hear the tears of Annette and Ron and all the countless parents who stand over caskets of their children. They obviously have lost touch with that. But now we must have a common sense approach to deal with what they have overturned. We must restrict who has a gun. Everybody should not have a gun. There ought to be a registration for the guns. There has to be not allowing handguns outside of the home. Yesterday on the radio, there was a woman who said she was in a store and somebody ran by and took her $20 bill. She said, if I had a gun, I could have shot him. Is that the kind of society that we want to build? Is that kind of culture that we can walk around with guns and we don't need police anymore? We just become our own police and vigilantes to one another. We have to limit the handguns inside the house. We have to limit the number of handguns of 1 per month. Because right now you can go to a gun show, buy 200 guns, and then sell them on the streets. We have to require guns to be safely stored where there are children or youth. We have a responsibility as adults to protect our children. We must make sure that adults are protecting children in the home. We should ban assault weapons, and there should be strict penalties for any kind of violators. But let me just close saying this, and something that the mayor mentioned earlier, and I want to just be a little stronger on that, because I believe it's time to push the federal government. It is time to push the federal government to stop avoiding and running from the gun issue. The assault weapon ban needs to be national. That shouldn't just be Chicago. That should be in America. We should demand a ban of assault weapons once and for all. We need to title guns like cars, so in America, every gun is registered and followed, and if I give a gun to somebody and I don't pass a title to somebody, then that gun is involved in the crime, you come for me. The government needs to do this because it does go across the states and across the country. I pray that our legislators in Springfield, and I pray particularly the legislators in Washington, will follow Mayor Daley's lead, so that the safety of our children become more important than the fear and the money of the NRA. It's time to do the right thing nationally and locally. It's time for citizens to make sure we keep our children safe.
I'm Ellen Alberting. I'm president of the Joyce Foundation based here in Chicago. It is not my dream to follow Father Pfleger. When I speak, I'd hope to speak before him. That was great. Thank you. The Joyce Foundation is a nonpartisan charitable foundation. We focus on issues and policies affecting the quality of life in the Midwest region. We could pretty much focus on, any issue that we want. We look at K-12 education in urban systems. We look at having a healthy environment, but we think that having safe communities is vital to every other public policy in our region. So we have chosen to focus a great deal of attention and funding on helping strong leaders like Mayor Daley and policymakers in our region and in Washington understand the impact of gun violence and access to guns, and establish common sense gun laws that will protect our citizens. That's why we are engaged, that's why I'm engaged, and I'm very proud to be a partner with Mayor Daley on that. I want to reinforce a couple of the points that the mayor made. One of the things that we do is fund researchers to really document the impact of access to guns. And I'm going to tell you 5 points that our top quality researchers at Harvard, at Johns Hopkins, at the University of Chicago, and other fine institutions around the country have documented in their research. First of all, women are at higher risk of being menaced by an intimate partner in their home than being injured or menaced outside of their home with a gun. That's important to understand. This is a women's issue in part. Guns in the home are used to intimidate partners more often than any other use. Third, access to guns increases the likelihood of a successful suicide. Communities that have higher access to guns have more successful suicides. They have the same level of suicide attempts, but successful suicides are far more likely when there's easy access to guns, and that's particularly true for young people. It's a very important point. It's not talked about much, but it is critical to understand that. Finally, fourth, children and young adults are at extremely high risk for injury. According to the Centers for Disease Control, the leading cause of death for young people ages 15 to 24 is suicide, homicide, and unintentional injury from guns. And finally, a point that the mayor has made many times, but I want to emphasize today, for every gun death, there are 4 major injuries. And these are people who live the rest of their lives with the consequences of these injuries at great cost to society, at great cost and personal anguish to themselves and their families. That's the reason we are focusing on this issue. We plan to continue to focus on this issue. And personally, I want to reinforce what we've heard here today, that it should not be a normalized thing to have a gun in a home. It is dangerous to have a gun in the home. Thank you very much.
Thank you.